Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to On the Cusp, OTC, episode number 13 with Mickey Nicholson and Amy. Amy, your last name's not up there, but how do you say your last name?
It's Ravi Chandran.
Okay. Thank you for
You're
that.
welcome.
Because I saw your last name and I said, I'm going to ask because I'm going to absolutely just ruin it if I try and say it. So thank you for that. So, as usual, to frame what the show is really all about is, exploring people's creativity, exploring the human condition, exploring just, you know, positive environments and just really talking like people sitting on a park bench and just looking at personal life, professional life, things that we aspire to, setting goals, achieving those goals, and sometimes the obstacles that we have to overcome in order to get there, as I like to say, right? Because ultimately we get in the way of ourselves. I always say that, right? People will end up making a straight line crooked, and only because they have their fears or insecurities around getting there. So it's always nice to have people like yourselves come on and share your story, whether it's both personally and professionally. Sometimes they're very intertwined, and with stories people walk away with a little bit of ammunition, tools, and some fuel to maybe apply to their lives. And we're going to be getting into a lot of book stuff, and we'll get to that in a little bit, which is cool. So anybody in the audience who's watching who has any questions for Mickey and Amy, please throw it up there. We'll post it. And otherwise, just to jump in, Mickey Mickelson from Creative Edge. And we did a show a while back, and that's his logo there from Creative Edge. We had him on and he talked about his publicity business from his end of things. And that was really cool. It was awesome. So we have Mickey back and look to do a show with a partner of his named Amy. So I'm just going to turn it over to you, Mickey, if you want to give a little bit of background on yourself and Creative Edge, and you take the wheel.
Sure. Thanks, Steph, for this. And I have to say that this is going to be one of my favorite interviews because I've got my two favorite people on the line with me today. So I know if I blow it, one of them is going to back me up on something for sure, for sure, for sure. So my name is Mickey Mickelson. I'm a publicist, owner of Creative Edge Publicity. We've been in business for 6 years. We have a client base of over 100 authors worldwide with a combination of traditional and indie clients. We have 3 New York Times bestsellers, 6 USA Today bestsellers. I am, as of this week, the sole publicist for 7 small press publishers. And we've also signed 2 musicians, one of which is being potentially optioned for a Grammy. So that's me in a nutshell. Looking forward to doing this. Very, very excited. Started my company in 2016 and been ongoing ever since. Did it part-time for 3 years. Went full-time in September 2019. Not my decision at the time, but a blessing overall. And it's been really, really good since then. So that's me in a nutshell.
Super awesome. Yeah. When you're talking about that nudge sometimes, right? That nudge we need sometimes comes from an external force and pushes us in the direction we ultimately always wanted to go into. So it's definitely a blessing. So how about you make the introduction of Amy, and then you can chime in.
For sure. So I am very pleased. And I hope I get your last name pronounced correctly, Amy, because I never get it right, and I know that.
I get to hear it twice.
This is Amy Ravichandran. She is the owner of Abundantly Social, which is a very mainstream social media company in the area of Houston, Texas. Amy has been on several magazine covers, Inc. magazine, CIO magazine. She was listed as one of the top social media firms for 2022 by Inc. magazine. I have been working with Amy for well over a year. Well, almost a year. Our anniversary is coming up. And it's been an incredible, incredible ride. And a person that I could not imagine my business life without at this point. So.
Nice. I don't even know how to follow that up, Mickey. Like, you have mentioned everything. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. No. So I do book marketing and social media marketing. Like Mickey mentioned, my business is called Abundantly Social, which I started 8 years ago, but I've been in the book and writing industry for 14. January will be 15 years. So it's been a really long time, but I like working primarily with indie and small press authors. My love is there. And so, I got a beautiful start from a lady that I consider to be my grandmother, Sandy Lawrence. And so all ever than that, and then I had Mickey call me up, and Steph, I have to tell you this story about Mickey.
Please. Oh, yes, please.
I always will never get this forgotten. She's going to leverage this forever, guaranteed.
It is the greatest story of Mickey. So it's so great. He called me up. I had put out, for one of the shows that I do, I had put out, just looking for new guests, and he calls me and he's like, well, I could fill your show for a year, Amy, but I see that you have another publicist on your show. And I want to make sure, okay, I'm going to be candid. I want to make sure that no business talk ever happens. And I'm over here just like, oh my goodness, like, nope. So I had like the fear of God in me at this point. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, that's great. This guy wants to give me like a lot of people to talk to, but oh my gosh, like, we just can't talk at all after the show, And then, the next thing you know, me and Mickey have been working together almost a year, and we're, BFFs. So it's been a wild ride with Mickey, but that was my first introduction to Mickey, which was just like no talking to my clients about nothing business. Okay.
Yeah, he's pretty hot out of the gates, the guy. Yeah, right there. There it is. Like an open book, right?
Yeah.
Just a quick question before you continue. So I love your logo, by the way. I took a close look at it, and I was like, oh, neat. A lot of thought went into it.
Oh,
and the term or the business name, abundantly social. Like, how did that come up? What does that mean as far as the brand goes?
Right. I wish I had a really great story for you. I really do. I was working with a PR firm at the time, and I was doing their social media. I was vice president of it. I was doing a lot. And I was like, you know what? I want to kind of branch off and do the social media kind of on my own. And I was thinking of names. My mother always told me that I was a social butterfly. So I was like, oh, let's do that. That's like has meaning, right? Well, that was taken. So the next thing I know, and I was like, well, social media is meant to be social and fun. And how do you combine those? And so Abundantly Social was available. And I was like, this is so perfect. And so I ran with it. And my logo, I changed 3 years ago. It used to be a big lotus flower. And I changed it 3 years ago when I rebranded into doing more book marketing. And so it's, the love of authors and books, kind of tied in there. So it's, it really speaks to what Abundantly Social is about. We have a love for indie authors and the writing community, and we're just super social, peppy people. Honestly, that's how that works. So,
well, I think that's a pretty cool story, and yeah, absolutely. And, Abundantly Social. And it is like, we'll probably get into the social media part of all that and what role it plays, especially in your business. But, yeah, so a little bit more on your origin story. You talked a little bit about consider your grandmother, and then you've been doing this for how long now?
Oh, yeah. So almost 15 years. It'll be 15 years in January. So I got my start. I was still in college when I got my start. I was working at a brain center. I have a degree in psychology. I was on the path to do clinical psych is what I wanted to do, right? Complete opposite, but that's what I wanted to do. And so I was working and going to school, and I was engaged at the time. And so one of the clients at the brain center did social media. And so she needed help, and she introduced me to this lovely lady named Sandy Lawrence. And she had a PR company at the time. She needed someone to help with her client's social media. And so I just kind of jumped in, and I got married, and I moved to Houston, and I met her in person, and we just like really clicked. And then, as time went on, I became vice president of her company, and then she retired 3 years ago and left me her company. And so I merged it with Abundantly Social. But I really got my start, and everything social media marketing, my love for authors and everything really came from her. And so I consider her my grandmother. I mean, I go and visit her. I love her. And she came and met my kids when they were born, and she's like, it's Grandma Sandy. And so she has such a special like place in my heart. And one of the shows I do, she created. She wanted everything, I just kind of took it and ran with it, to keep her legacy going, and the passion that she had instilled for me that she had. And so it was, she's still involved. I still talk to her every day. And so it was just so divine the way that it happened and that she came into my life. So it's been so great.
I really I really love what you just shared. There's a couple of nuggets that I pulled out of that I liked, and you got ahead of it on me on one of them when you mentioned the word legacy, because the first thing I was thinking, what a super cool legacy story, right? Legacy piece. It's just this incredible handoff, right? Of working together, creating something, and then it's yours. So the other nugget I pulled from it is I love it when people tell me their background and they say, hey, I was in psychology. I was going to be pursuing and chasing clinical psychology. And then here you are doing what you're doing. And most people I talk to are not doing any, like even remotely close to what they went to school for, but it's a huge foundation. It's a part of your life where you're developing yourself in different ways. So did any part of that psychology degree come into play in your success in doing the business that you're doing now?
I mean, I like to think so. I am generally, I'm quoting Mickey here. I'm really good with people, I guess. But it's something that I feel like for me, when I take on new clients and stuff, I really want them to feel more like family and not just like another number. And so I try to get on their level and what they want to accomplish, because it's not my goal or anything like theirs. It's theirs. And so I just want to honor them because it's their work, their legacy that they're leaving. Right. And so I just get to be a part of it. So usually when I talk to them and convey those things and stuff, I always like to, just like if we ever hit a problem, I like to have the problem, find the solution, and then tell them, here's the problem, but we fixed it. So we're good. Right. So it's taking that like ease and stuff away. So I guess my psychology degree in that, since I understand how the brain works and communication and emotional things, it makes it where I can kind of adapt to anybody and what they need and kind of see, okay, well, you're just upset. So here's what we're going to do. Let's take the tension out of the air. Like, here's something funny, something like that. So I guess in a sense that it's helped me in that realm. I never would have pictured doing marketing. I mean, I was like research psych, doing experiments. I was gung-ho, and then I got married and I moved. So that just went on pause. So it was crazy. It was very crazy.
Well, I appreciate that, Sharon. I was actually expecting to hear that kind of answer, right? Your psychology background. And back to a little bit about me, and we shared before we went on air, is having been in the high performance world and a lot of sports psychology. There's a lot of psychology when you're working with people at that level. And just everybody's got fears and insecurities and people who may be coming back really injured and all the emotions that go with that. And you have to always be that beacon of hope, like you said, finding the solution. Say, hey, yeah, it could just maybe kind of crappy right now, but hey, you know what? We're gonna work through it and fix it. The other thing you said that I like, and where I see why you and Mickey probably work so well together, is when you said you want to treat your clients like family. So I'm a huge proponent of that myself. It's number one, right? Is I see people as people, not a transaction or anything else. I see you first, and I want to align myself with who you are as a person. And for Mickey, and I wrote this note before the show, is our time together in our previous gig, in that previous lifetime, is I learned quickly from Mickey, just his fabric, his DNA is very committed to people, very committed to finding the solution and also trying to get their goals to become material and to become real. So when we would go and spend time with accounts and sit in meetings and whatnot, I hadn't seen a more dedicated person than Mickey, who was really there listening really well and intently. And we'd always have our debrief time in the car because we have 4 hours to talk about a meeting. And he really candidly cares about people. And so I see why this relationship works so well. So maybe Mickey, so you kind of talked about that, your relationship, and maybe how you complement each other, kind of how it came together, and were the compliments?
For sure. I mean, to be completely transparent, Aimee really balances me because she's light and fluffy and all about people and the relationship piece. Whereas I'm sometimes, and you know this, and people who know me know this, I'm sometimes like a bull in a china shop because I want to get the results done and I want to get them done now. Fact of the matter is, I'm managing over 100 relationships in terms of publicity and such. And so there are times when there's intensity and there's maybe aggressiveness, but it's all in terms of caring and wearing your heart on your sleeve and having that passion. But that's where Aimee comes in, because she's the balance for those conversations. There's many times where I might say the wrong thing, not because I want to, but just because it's coming from the heart and it's not being communicated the right way. And Aimee will leverage that from that aspect. That's one area. The other area is she thinks like me. And I have not met anybody in this industry who can understand what I do and how I do it, except for Aimee. I've gone through two potential business partners trying to figure out what I do and how I do it in every single day. They couldn't. Aimee, day one, she knew exactly what I was doing, how I was doing it, and the results of doing that. And so we think a lot alike, and it leverages itself out to being a very two-pronged, results-focused attack with our clients that we work with together on. I mean, are we merging our businesses and are we going to have that? Likely not, but we're doing a lot of things together that we tend to feel are complementary. And it's a very, very balanced team aspect that creates very strong results.
Yeah, and that's everything in a relationship, right? It's everything. You both have your strengths, and you'll both have the areas that where I don't like calling them weaknesses or challenges. You just call them areas that it's just not your forte, right? It's like, don't send your defense to play forward. It's just, I know what I'm good at and what I excel at, and I'm very aware where I'm not good at. So I stay away from those things unless I need to develop them, right? But you talked about getting results. You talked about she understands and understood you professionally and what you do immediately. So I don't know, maybe Aimee, can you talk a little bit about the business side and maybe what Mickey's talking about there, but understanding like that piece?
Yeah. So I don't know if it comes from just my background in PR or, not because I stepped away from that 3 or 4 years ago, but it's just more about, when you are doing PR and stuff, I feel like we live in such like an instant gratification kind of thing that's going on right now, right? And so when you're doing PR and stuff, it's all a marathon, it's not a sprint. And so you have to do the time and build and get your name out there to be known outside of your inner circle, right? And expand that before you can ever be on big TV or big podcasts and things like that, because you have to get outside of your pool first, because no one outside of your family, friends, city knows you, right? So you have to branch out slowly, and that's where it's a marathon, not a sprint. And it doesn't convert always into book sales, but you have to get your name out there with your first book and everything like that to build up to all of your other books that you put out. And then, sales and stuff will come, but you have to get known, and being known is a marathon. That's where it takes time to kind of build on that. And so, the things that Mickey does in getting you on all kinds of podcasts, even if it's smaller ones or big TV slots or anything like that, you never know who's watching. You never know what's going to happen. So you have to take every opportunity. And that's where, when you are nitpicky and you pick different ones, and you're like, oh no, I don't want to do that. Well, you never know what could have been, right? So you have to be open to everything. And so I think those are just like 2 examples of it, but you kind of just have to do the time, and you put in, no one became famous overnight. None of that's happened. And so you have to be willing to put in the time and understand that it's going to take time.
And you say something there, Aimee, that I'm a big fan of, and other people that have been on our show all have very much the same DNA as you two fine folks. And that's why I love doing this show, is having that understanding. I love that quote, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And that's life in a nutshell. But not leaving any stone unturned. If at every obstacle I came up against, or if every time I didn't get the ROI that I was looking for on a marketing piece or, an advertising piece when I was self-employed or whatever, I would have given up a long, long, long time ago. And just like you said, Aimee, my opportunities came out of the blue. Yeah. The ones that were big, they just came out of the blue. It was somewhere, somehow, someone spoke about me, or they heard me do it. They saw me do what I did, and they reached out, and then bam. So absolutely. And that's a huge nugget for anybody who's watching this show, is you need to have an entrepreneurial spirit about your life. And with any entrepreneur, you talk about anybody who's successful, people only see the end result, right? Oh, look at that. If you measure success with money, wealth and material things, which I don't. But by and large, we're a society where that's our measuring stick. And it's all you see is that versus, well, what about the thousands and thousands and thousands of hours that they spent honing their craft and like the business that you guys do? So a little bit of a dovetail for me here. I'm very interested in how the publicity business is set up for people that do your work. So how does that, so a little more, for me, when I was a strength and conditioning coach, well, I got compensated for my service based on the level of service I was providing. So with an athlete, it was always more money because it was that much more requirement of knowledge and skill and education. So how's the world of publicity set up? Like, how does it all work?
So I can only speak, and I don't know if Amy's going to talk about this or not, but I can only speak to what I do. I don't know how other publicists charge their clients. I don't know how they leverage their opportunities. I've heard that most of them are way more expensive than I am, and sometimes maybe more effective, but likely not. But end of the day, for me, it's booking and getting reader-based opportunities. When we're meeting with an author, an indie author who's got her first debut book out, and they say to us, Mickey, I want to be on NPR. I want to be on the Today Show. I want to be on Good Morning America. And it happens. They say these things. I am like, you need to tone down, because you're not going to get, as a debut indie author, you're not going to get Good Morning America off the track. And in all actuality, in all honesty, Good Morning America is not a reader show. It attracts millions and millions and millions of audience who will watch it. Millions and millions of audience are likely not going to buy your book. So let's focus on building out your author branding and get you on smaller, reader-based, focused TV, print podcasts that are actually going to make a difference. And if Good Morning America calls, we'll take it. But it's a transitional piece. Small opportunities to medium to large, building blocks. That's how we work stuff.
Right. Kind of a
Case
walk before you run kind of thing, consulting your clients on really where targeting your energy is going to pay off a little bit more as far as dividends versus thinking, like a big show like Good Morning America. So a little bit more on, and maybe Amy, you can chime in here, is so it's a consultancy and you guys get compensated as consultants, but does it change depending on who's your clients and how big a client is? I'm just curious because I haven't been self-employed. And the other reason why I ask these questions, I ask for the audience, and you answer the questions how you want. Because if I was listening and I got a book and I'm working on a book, that's why I'm also asking for myself. I'm working on a book.
Okay.
I'd like to know like what that relationship is like. How does that work? So Amy.
Yeah. Well, so my structure is a little bit different than Mickey's. So when it comes to like social media, book launches, doing all those kind of campaigns and stuff, book launches is a one-time fee. And so what a book launch is, you're going to launch your book on April 31st, right, on Halloween. And what we'll do is we're going to get people engaged. We're going to get different newsletters and those kind of readers engaged with it to give your book the best success rate that we can, right? So that's like a one-time fee. And then the rest are monthly fees when it comes to like social media and things like that. Now, where your fees change is when it comes to publishing houses. So if publishing houses have, anywhere from like 1 to 5 author, then that's a set amount. And then once we go over 5 authors, because then that takes more time, right? Especially if they're in very different genres. If you have one publishing house that only publishes one genre, we love you. We love you. But if you have multiple genres and stuff, that takes a lot more time. So then that fee is going to be different depending on how many additional authors that you want to add. For me, that's where kind of the pricing changes. And then in terms of like social media pricing and stuff, you have your standard price if you want 3 platforms, but if you want to add everything under the sun, then that's different, because that is a lot more time that I have to dedicate and making sure everything works, and probably get more people involved, like a graphic design or someone else, to make sure that everything's going 100%, because I'm a firm believer in not being on more than 3 platforms, because I don't believe that you can do more than 3 100% effectively. I feel like you spread yourself too thin. So I really urge against that. But if, if someone wants to do that, then that changes the pricing of it. But for me, those are the 2 things that kind of change. Everything else is really set standard. It doesn't vary.
Okay, no, awesome. Thank you for that. That really helps. A lot of clarity there.
And
Yes.
Steph, I'd like to explain my pricing structure too, because I don't think I did that in the question. So I wasn't sure where you were going with that. If that's okay, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. It's your show, man.
So my pricing structure is different from Aimee's, from the fact that the authors will only pay if they're actually booked for opportunities. If they're not booked for opportunities in a given month, they're not getting an invoice for that month. So it's very, very results based. Everything is individually priced. So a TV spot's a certain dollar amount, a radio spot's a certain dollar amount, a blog post, guest post, whatever. Everything's individually priced. Then what we do is we set up a maximum cap per month per author. And I negotiate that cap with the author, depending on who they are and who they write with and all of that. Publishers have a flat fee every single month, because they usually are bringing 10 to 20 authors when they bring over. So there's enough opportunities in a given month to warrant that charge. But with individual authors, it's all results based. And then we set up a max cap per month. And if they go over that max cap in a given month, they're only charged what their cap is. If they get less than what their cap is, they pay the less amount. And if they don't do anything in a given month, I don't send them an invoice for that month. So it's very results based.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool to know too. So I find it fascinating. Thank you for because I try to wrap my mind around how it is in your world as publicist you arrived at your pricing menu, if you will. Like probably from just time and experience. Because again, for me, I would start off my pricing. And then when I first started as strength and conditioning coach, I certainly, back to a comment you made, Mickey, is I certainly wasn't charging what I should have been charging, because I didn't think I was worth it, until some of my clients actually told me, you're not charging nearly as much as you should, Steph. And
I still get that.
Right. And I had to grow into that, knowing that I'm worth it. And then I did. And I did, because I provide a very, very high level of service and value and care and just commitment, which you guys obviously do. So how does that come about for you guys when you make your pricing menu? Maybe Aimee, because you've been doing this for almost 15 years, did you have to do a lot of, yeah, we got to tweak that. And what am I going to charge for social media per se, et cetera?
Yeah. So a lot of what I did is I broke everything down into bundles that you purchased when you need, for however long you need, right? Because my ultimate goal is, we can manage your social media and do all of that, but my ultimate goal is to eventually get you to the point where you don't need me anymore, because you can manage it yourself. You understand all that, right? So it's like a temporary expense. But I broke everything down into bundles, so then I could charge it. It was cheaper, right, than doing like the retainer price and like a year commitment kind of thing, And so when I broke it down, it was, how much is it going to cost me, like for a book launch, right? How much do book promotions and stuff cost me? And then how much time do I have to put into that? And then how much is my time worth, right? And so that's kind of how I came out with the price for book launches. And then for social media, it was like, okay, so on a really good day, how long does it take me for all 3 platforms a day to make sure everything's going, make sure the posts are going, creating the post, doing everything like that? And so what does that break down to in a month, of hours that I spend, and what my time is valued at, right? So my time has gone up. So the more experience that I've gotten, the more education, I guess, in this realm and experience and connections and things that I have, it's slowly has gone up. So I've only made 2 pricing changes in my 15 years of doing this. But it's just gone up with, okay, I can do all of these things. I know all these things. My results speak for it. So here's what my hourly rate is. And so if you want to pay me hourly, here's what it is, which will be a lot more than just paying for the bundle, right? So
Right.
it's kind of like that, but I like to bridge the gap, right? Because I like to be budget friendly. So it's like, okay, well, if none of these options work for you, then what we'll do is we'll just do an hour and a half a month of my time, and I will teach you how to do it, and then
Wow.
that comes out to where you learn how to do it. You have my undivided attention. We can meet in person, online, whatever you want to do to make sure that you know it. Because at the end of the day, social media and just marketing online anyways is how everything is going, right? And so I don't want people to get lost in the shuffle and not be able to be successful because they fell behind when what was happening, right? And so I like to bridge the gap because I don't I don't want people to get left behind. They're like, well, I wrote a book, but I can't market it, and I don't. Social media has gone crazy, and I don't know about running ads, and I get so many overwhelmed, So I'm just like, look, let's meet. I'll give you an hour and a half. Let's learn what we learn. We'll rebook in a couple weeks, and let's see where you're at. To me, that just is. I don't know. I learned it from Sandy, but it was just like, it's not my story, it's theirs. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to empower them to be able to be successful and eventually not need me to do it, because they can handle it on their own. And so that's just always been my goal and my motto is like, I want people to be able to do it. And I don't want to break people's bank because putting out a book, editing a book, doing a book cover, I know what all of that costs, and I don't want to break anybody's budget. Like that was never my goal. So, I mean, I still get told now that, I should be like 3 times or 4 times what I'm charging, but it's never been about that for me. I want to empower people to do it on their own.
Well, I am taken and impressed and find that what you just said very commendable because it's very honorable when you hear somebody, a professional, say, you don't want anybody to be left behind, and you will offer what you can to that person, coaching them up to be empowered to take a lot of the guesswork out of, getting their book out there. And that brings me back to something I wrote down. And you said, you kind of consult to limit somebody to 3 platforms. So
Yeah.
I'm curious what would be your top 3 platforms. If I was a budding author and I'm like, Mickey Aimee, what 3 platforms should I be focusing on?
Yeah. So it really depends on like your genre book that you write in, because every platform has a different audience base, right? Like fantasy, sci-fi, children's authors, things that are very visually stimulating do great on Instagram, right? Because they're picturesque. You can post all these things, you can engage, you can go on to, Bookstagram and authors of Instagram and really network and build relationships. When it comes to like nonfiction, health and wellness, spirituality books, I have had the most success, their top platform being like LinkedIn or Facebook, because you can get involved in so many Facebook groups and network and communicate and build those relationships. And you can do the same from a professional aspect on LinkedIn, right? So those are always the 2 for like nonfiction that I recommend, because I've always had the best success because you have people on LinkedIn, right? Which always gets like underrated for me. And so it's like you have people, yes, it's like professional and there's a different etiquette and way of writing on there, but you have people that are looking for those kinds of books on LinkedIn. And you have people in different Facebook groups and stuff that are looking for authors like that. So those would be like my 2. Twitter for me is, I have a love-hate relationship with Twitter. Okay. I know as a social media person, I should love them all, but I really have a love-hate relationship with Twitter. The life of a tweet is like 6 seconds. Okay.
Right.
So if you really want to get known on Twitter and capitalize on it, you have to be tweeting all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know for myself, I don't have that amount of time to do like 30 tweets a day for everybody. And I don't think really anybody else does. Yeah. So it just depends. I think Twitter is great for reaching out to agents and building up relationships with them and things like that. I've had success doing that. I haven't had success in like building up followers and reader base on Twitter, right? You can kind of get into rants and do Twitter chats and those kind of things. And those are wonderful. And you can network with other authors. But in terms of like conversions and things like that, for me, Twitter's not where it's at. So, I mean, I'm always going to funnel into, the Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Now, there's TikTok, right? Everyone's like all over TikTok.
Oh,
right?
man. Yeah.
And so TikTok is great for certain genres. It is wonderful for romance authors. Wonderful. And it's wonderful for like children's authors, that deal with like parenting or, creative ways of helping your kid read and stuff like that. It's wonderful for that. For horror, sci-fi, it doesn't work. Now, if you're doing like a health and wellness and you're like, this is what I wrote in my book and I'm going to demonstrate it, it would work wonderfully for that. But it's not for every genre. And I think that's where people are like, but it's like the most trending thing. Just because it's trending doesn't mean it's great for the genre you write in, because it doesn't, your readership isn't on there. They're not looking for that. So that's where it's redundant to say, but every platform has a different audience and they're targeted towards different ages. And so you have to figure out what age range you're targeting for your book and where they're going to be. That's going to give you the most visibility. It may not convert, but it gets you the most visibility in your target age range of what your book is about and who would enjoy it. So that's where, it kind of comes down to, and not to oversaturate your market, posting 10 to 15 times a day, all the same content on all platforms. No one wants to see that because they're different on each one. But if I go from LinkedIn to Facebook, it's the same post. I know what you did. So you have to diversify it, and so that's where it can get overwhelming and it can get confusing. And you're just like, I don't want to do new content every day, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it does, because I've leveraged different platforms for many years for my own personal businesses and projects, and that's what I would always ask myself: is it time well spent? Am I spending my time in the right place? Right. So that's really great advice, Amy, for sure on that. Especially for me, my book is a book all about business, life coaching, the human condition. Just so. Yeah, would I be on TikTok? I guess not. No, LinkedIn and those other platforms you mentioned, Facebook, it makes sense. So that's something for me to walk away with that helps me out. Now, are there a lot of authors out there? Is there a lot of authors that reach out to you like every day and just come out of the woodwork and say, I got a book?
Yeah, I have a lot, Mickey. I'm sure Mickey does. I'm sure Mickey has more than I do.
I field 15 discussions at least every single week.
Yeah.
Okay. And how do you determine? So it's me again, my curious mind. For me, writing a book, how do you determine? You could go, okay, I read your book, Steph. You should go back to work. There's got to be a bit of that conversation, right? Because not everybody who's writing something is writing something that you go, oh yeah, okay, we can do something with this.
Right.
How do you deal with those conversations?
I think I have a lot more of those conversations than Mickey might, but I have the conversation, like, hey, this needs to be developmental edited. Like, you didn't invest in it, right? You just had, your high school English teacher edited or something, So those conversations are not the most fun. It's not the most fun to tell someone, hey, like, your book is not ready to put out into the world. You still need to polish it, because to them, and this is I hear this all the time, is it's like their child and their baby, and they're just taking a leap of faith and they're ready to put it out there. And you're like, well, no. Okay. It's not that great yet. We need to polish it. Right. They take that such to heart, and it's difficult conversations. And it's one of those where you have to, I ease into it in a sense where I'm like, what is your goal with the book? Is your book like a one and done to help bring business to you? Right. Because if so, let's do a little bit more tweaking and we're set, ready to go. But if you're wanting to continuously put out books, right, then your branding, your name, everything's going on to that. So we need to make sure that each book is the best that it can be, and because that's going to matter 5 years down the road when someone picks up your very first book, right? Because each book you become a stronger writer, but that first book you want to set the tone and you just get stronger. And instead of it was really weak, and then the second one's so much better because you took more time on it. So, it's kind of one of those where our name was also going on it. And so we don't want to do that as well. And I know for my conversations, it's a lot like this. It's just like, well, let's just, we need some more time. I'm sorry, we need some more time, but it's great where it's at, but it could be better. Like, I ease the blow And
Yeah.
I love being in meetings with Mickey because Mickey's like, well, are you open to this? Because this needs to change. And I'm like, I wish I was like that. So I love having Mickey on those calls because it just is like, oh, well, because then he can just be blunt and straight. And I can be like, well, but it's great, though. You know, it's great. It's like good cop, bad cop in those
Well,
meetings.
and again, that's where the compliment's so important, right? It's like,
Yeah.
you know, Mickey gets it tabled, bam, there it is on the table. Okay, let's
We
have
balance
that. I
each
love
other.
that, right? And then
we balance each other.
And then you know what? I've had my experiences with Mickey on the road and meeting with the accounts and clients where I was you, Amy. You know, and Mickey would just zing, and I'd be like, "Okay, oh, he shot the missile. It's out there." But then now I'm just kind of, you know, getting everybody massaging it a bit and going, "Oh, okay, all right."
Sorry, guys.
No, hey man, listen,
you're breaking the tension is what you're having to do because you know it could be like World War III in the car, you know, and you're just like, well, no, but this part's really great though, you know, great. Yeah.
And I appreciate that because for me, I had a lot of those challenges too. Because you guys are consultants and you're coaches in all respects. And that's been my whole life. It's been a mainstay. And I still do that today. And especially on the athletic side, you know, you would have, you know, parents think their kid was going to the NHL. And you look at this kid who's 15 and he's, you know, playing bantam and he weighs 120 pounds. Just his genetics, it's there. And I remember many conversations, especially this one dad, his son was built like a bird. And I thought, I'm like, you're part of this Bantam Dryland group? I'm like, you sure? Okay, you are. And then dad came to see me once just to get some advice on, hey, I want, we'll call him Cole, because I want him to put on some size and bigger. What does he need to do? And I just said, all right, so you can't put on size. You can do certain things to improve, but I go, I'm gonna be honest with you, it's not going to look like those other 4 kids. He'll never be that, right? And being candid, again, is the word of the day here, is that level of honesty, because you do have to temper some people's enthusiasms, right? Because I've never been a believer in telling, and I don't say you can't do it, it's not possible, but I'm also saying, hey, there is a ceiling to where you can go with it, with the work you're going to put in. So I appreciate those delicate conversations sometimes you have to have, right? And you said something else there that I like, but I'm trying to, that's what I wanted to ask about. Because I remember Mickey on the show that we had, and you guys touched on it in this show, is like getting somebody on a show, which is like a TV show or even a radio show. I'm sure not all of your authors are like, yeah, I can't wait to sit on a TV show and get asked questions and talk, or on a podcast. But then you're like, but it's kind of important for your publicity of your work. So how do you handle those conversations when you're like, all right, Steph, we're putting you on a show next week. It's what you wanted. And I'm petrified.
So my attack on that, and that it really comes back to the signing interview, but my attack on that is, every author, well, 90% of authors are highly introverted people. They would rather sit in their office at home in their pajamas and write instead of marketing and talking about stuff and all that. So what I do I identify who those people are when we have our consultations prior to signing with me. When they sign with me and I know that they're like this, I will slowly graduate them from opportunity to opportunity. So maybe for the first few months, they're only doing written interviews just to get out there. They write up their interview structure. They write up their answers. So they get a feel for how to answer questions. Then we will start to gradually put them onto smaller viewed podcasts, 15, 18 views, smaller shows, less apprehension, less stress, all of that. Some authors may not be ready for TV for a year. I have an author who's been working with me for 2 years. They've never been on a TV show. And it's not that they wouldn't be accepted on a TV show. It's that they don't want to be on a TV show because it's too stressful for them. Mm-hmm. So we focus on written stuff and we focus on smaller aspects. That's typically what we do. There are other authors on the other side who think, I've got TV, I've got it down pat. And then they go on TV and they have a really, really, really bad interview. So I then look at those interviews and I coach them on that. And I say, okay, we got you on this national spot. How do you think it went? And they'll start telling me, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, I looked at it. This needs to change. This needs to change. And this tweak needs to change. You did this good, but this part, we should be doing something different around that. So it's a coaching session. And no, I'm not mean when I'm doing it. I'm being very nice in generality about it. Might be hard to believe, but it's true. But end of the day, it's all about getting better as we go through this journey together. That's what the message is.
Okay, and I like that approach. You know, it shows that you guys are seasoned professionals, right? Is, you know, you sit down. That's what that consultation and meeting somebody at the beginning and kind of peeling the onion with that person is, to get a sense of where they're at, who they are, what they're comfortable with, and what they're not comfortable with, and just laying out a game plan. You know, grooming that person to get there, right? Not just be like, hey, I'm going to put you in a scenario where it's not only going to be super stressful for you, like you said, Mickey, but at the same time, not showcase you in a way that you should be showcased, right? Because
Yeah.
that's the goal. So that's super cool. Thanks for that. The other thing I wanted to ask kind of quickly before we do a segue into something else is, Aimee, what's your favorite genre of book for you to consume? Do you have one when you have that leisure time with, you know, 2 cats, 2 dogs, the business world spinning?
My favorite genre is the psychological thrillers or horror suspense. That if you can scare me where I don't want, to go to sleep, then to me that's like one of the best books, because I don't know, it takes me out of reality for a little bit, and
Yeah.
I like to be scared. I don't like going to haunted houses though, okay? Like don't get me wrong. I don't actually want those things to happen, but I like to read about them. I really do.
Okay, so is there an author that does that for you, that gets you there?
So there is an indie author. I call her the female version of Stephen King, is
Oh,
what I call her. And that is Meg Hofdahl, who writes Her Dark Inheritance. Twisted Reveries is a collection of short stories. She took a Twilight episode called, I want to say it was Willoughby, and turned it into a story, a horror story. And it was one of those, I like the Twilight Zone, like the old school one. And so it was kind of like a changing moment for me, where then I needed to get all of her books. And so I have them. They're all on my bookshelf behind me. You can't see it, but I adore her, and I've talked to her several times. So I'm honored to get to know her, but it's her story and the way that she writes is amazing. So
very, very cool. So when you guys reference the term indie writer, what does that mean? In indie, for me, I'm trying to.
Independent author. So they're not with a publishing house. A self-published author. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Because I was thinking completely the wrong thing. So,
No. Yeah.
Trust me, it wasn't IndyCar racing.
No.
I know we're talking books.
Yeah, independent published author. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Mickey, yourself, a favorite genre?
Comic books.
Yes.
To be honest,
Yeah.
I'm a visual person, so I like to see the pictures along with the writing to tie it all together. Do I read books? Yes. Do I enjoy books? Yes. I'm like Aimee. I love thriller and horror, and my favorite author just passed away, Peter Straub. May he rest in peace. But along with that, I also enjoy, someone that I work with, which is Tosca Lee, because she's multi-genred, and she's just super. Yeah, thank you. She's super talented, and I love her writing style and all of that. But end of the day, I mean, my thing is really graphic novels and comic books and all of that. So I like the visual aspect of that, and the stories are gravitating as well. So.
Yeah, I know. Comic books are super cool. Yeah, my favorites are pop-ups, because I'm a visual guy too.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go.
Pop-up
there you
books.
go.
Yeah.
No, it's all good.
Yeah, for me, I've gravitated more towards audiobooks in the last 5-6 years, only because I barely have time to actually truly sit and read. So I got to kill two birds with one stone. Usually my commute to and from work is where I get a chance to, let my mind, and it's fun too. And I have a huge appreciation. I don't know about you guys, if you've ever listened to audiobooks, but I get really jazzed when it's the actual author that's narrating their own book. It's just this whole extra little perk, And I remember when I was recommended the book by Matthew McConaughey, Green Lights.
Yeah.
What a great book. And it's him who starts out, and I just had this big grin on my face. I go, I get to listen to McConaughey for, I don't know, 10 hours. So I'm like, all right.
I love it.
So
I love it.
Thanks for those shares. So I wanted to get into Top Shelf. And just you guys can take the wheel. I'm going to put up, here you go. This is a picture that Mickey sent me. And dive right in. Top Shelf.
Yeah. I worked with Top Shelf magazine for over 4 years. They would highlight my authors in their magazine, cover stories, guest posts, all of that. The previous owners, Keith Kestikis and Becky Kestikis, I had a very good working relationship with them. And then one day they decided they wanted to do something else. And so they basically put on their website that Top Shelf was going away, all of that. They then called me one day and they said, Mickey, you're our favorite publicist. We have a long-term working relationship with you. We want you to take over Top Shelf. This is a magazine that's had multiple New York Times bestsellers on the magazine cover. It's a magazine that's worked with every major publisher in the United States, library connections, media connections, everything. And my thing was, and this is a long-winded answer, but I want to get there. My thing was, I would love to, in my own brain, I would love to take over this magazine. I cannot do it alone. So I talked to Aimee and we talked about it. And I said, we need to do this magazine and we need to co-own it together. We had a meeting with Keith and Becky. I was incredibly honored, almost to tears, when they told me, we're simply going to give you the magazine, Mickey, because we believe in you and we want it to thrive and we want it to go on and we want the legacy to move forward. And we want you as the person to do that. Aimee was on the call. She heard it. It was an incredibly touching moment. We've had 3 issues out. It's been successful in my mind. And but Keith and Becky gave that to us. And
what an incredible relationship, thinking back to Aimee's legacy piece, right? Near the beginning of the show. And then we have another great legacy piece of another relationship wanting to leave something that's established and successful behind. And you guys owning that part of the business. So for the Top Shelf, it's a magazine, right?
It is.
Okay. So I'm making the assumption that in this magazine, you are featuring authors. And then you have a main feature, usually there's a person on the cover of it that we saw, right?
Yes.
So how is the magazine then structured?
We wanted it when we took it over, and it was already doing this, but we wanted to strategize, and I'll let Aimee talk about this as well, but we want Top Shelf to be known as the book community magazine, not focusing just on traditionally published authors, not focusing on just self-published authors, but the whole book community as a whole. So we're showcasing authors, obviously. We're doing guest posts, we're doing book reviews, we're doing cover stories. But beyond that, we're also focusing on bookstores, book media, book conventions, all of that kind of stuff. And so that's where we wanted to go with it. There were some criticisms that Mickey and Aimee were going to make it the Creative Edge Abundantly Social magazine. That's not what we're trying to do. It's trying to show it as a whole, encompassing overall. So,
Aimee, anything you feel like adding to that?
Well, I mean, it was very well said, Mickey. I think, for us, right, it's letting all writers kind of have their moment, right? Because like Mickey said, there's traditional and really big names, but then there's some awesome indie or self-published authors and small press authors. They may not be New York Times bestsellers, but they write some awesome books. And so this really is an encompassment, I guess is the word I'm going to choose to use, of just the writing community. There's some really great, like, author writer driven podcasts and features that have done a lot for the writing community, and they really dive into the publishing realms or different writing styles, different genres, and the way that you write those, and creating maps and worlds and world building, right? And so different elements that go into the book community as well as the writing community, and how they can strengthen each other, right? Or inspire a wannabe writer or someone that's dabbling in it, doesn't know if they really, want to take that leap of faith, right? But there's different avenues to do that, and different resources and knowledge bases and stuff. So it's not all about just big names or, traditional top 5 publishing, authors. It's all kinds of authors, because to me and Mickey, all authors and all stories are to be told. There's always a story behind the story that you wrote, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of letting that shine and letting you kind of get a sense of those authors, right? Because just because they're not like super award winning or New York Times bestsellers doesn't mean they don't have good books, right? So
That's right.
it's an encompassment of both the book and writing community.
And
Right.
there's even a comic book section, Steph. I made sure of that.
You know what? I think that's great. That's super awesome. So is this magazine also available in an electronic format too, or is it just a physical paper classic?
Actually, it's the
magazine?
opposite. There's not available a print section yet.
Okay.
It's online only. If everything falls into place, though, we're hoping to have it into bookstores next year if everything works out.
Really cool, man.
Possibly,
That's a bit of a passion project. I'm excited for you guys. I love it. I think it's great. Now, we talk about Aimee made the comment a few times along the way. It's like, hey, authors. Some authors are, they're made it. They hit the big leagues is the best way I can say it, right? It's kind of like, they went to the NHL. That must be such a small percentage of authors that make it to like New York Times bestseller. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, to me, that's a fair statement.
Yeah,
it's
so
an eclectic group.
Yeah,
very eclectic group.
And so it's kind of like any other artist, I suppose. Some people still have very much that full-time job. There's very few that make it there, and that's how they make their money, because they've reached that level. And it must be at the same time too, just kind of thinking out loud as we're on that theme, is you have authors who, well, you mentioned Stephen King. I think the man is fascinating. I question his mind sometimes. But he like you, what you're saying, Aimee, about the books, he can definitely take me places that I never thought I would ever go.
Right. Yeah.
I'm like, how did you even think that up, dude? But here we are. Super cool. Is to be able to churn out books. Like, some authors can just churn them out, and they're all awesome.
Yeah.
And that's obviously got to be just this talent, this something that they have, right? As far as from a creativity point of view. But I guess the question I'm leading into, guys, is there must be an enormous amount of pressure that an author at that level, New York best-selling, has to be able to do it again and then do it again. That'd be a fair statement as well.
It goes, and I use Stephen King as an example all the time in my client interviews. Aimee's been there for them. It's all about branding, right? Stephen King is the master of leveraging the branding of Stephen King. He's not known for just writing Salem's Lot or The Stand or Cujo or Misery. He's known for writing so many books. And when he puts out a new book, his readers know that it's a Stephen King book, and they're going to get a certain amount of entertainment value by buying that book. that wasn't done by accident. He
Mhm.
leveraged the Stephen King brand to make that successful. And
Mhm.
so all New York Times bestsellers, I represent Tosca Lee. She's a multiple New York Times bestseller. She does the exact same thing. She provides entertainment value in her works. And so her readers know what that's coming from a branding standpoint. When me and Amy are trying to strategize platforms for our authors and try to get them out there, that's the pinnacle that we're looking for. Whether they be indie or whether they be traditionally published, we're trying to leverage the branding so that their books are with their readers. And no matter what they write, their readers are going to expect that it's a Stephen King type book, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. And branding, I mean, there's something that is hugely important in so many aspects, right? Talking about social media and what you do and how you brand yourself, your personal brand as well. So about branding, how much does an author's personality, character, as far as that brand, play in the success of the sale of their book? Just outside of just the content and it being a great book, because we're using Stephen King. Now, Stephen King is just on his own, is a very fascinating man.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, I mean, it makes it just curious because he's a little different, but that works for him. And there's certain other authors where they've got a certain something as far as charisma and character that help their book sales. Is that an important part of it too?
I think me and Amy will maybe disagree on this, but I would say it's at least 90%.
Come on, Amy, disagree with the man.
Oh my goodness. I mean, okay, so we do disagree on the number of it being 90%. I think a lot of your personality has to shine, right? And I think, a part of what makes Stephen King so fascinating, besides the way that he writes, is like this expectation, right? When you get, Stephen King put out a new book, you know what to expect. And you know what to expect from him and his personality, his demeanor, all of that, right? And that feeds into all of it. But I think it's not getting up, like when someone goes and talks about their book, right? They don't get up there and they're not selling their book the whole time. The passion for what they have written or is going to write and why they wrote it is really ultimately what converts people. So I'm a firm believer in that aspect of it. I don't know, some are like, oh, well, I write this character, I got to put on that facade and everything like that. I'm like, I think you should just go out there and talk about why you love the genre you wrote it and why you wanted to write it, right? So for me, I think that's 100% what feeds into it, because from someone that loves that genre, if you can talk like that and I can feel your passion for it and you just like scary things and you want to bring that to people that also like that, I'm 100% in. Like, I'm like, yes, you get me. We should be best friends. We are, like, in my mind, we're best friends, right? And so I think those kind of like conversations and the way that you come across in that aspect are very much desired. But I also I'm on the same fence for people that don't want to communicate and do those things. There's an alluring aspect to that too, where it's like, well, why don't we ever hear from this person? Why doesn't this author ever talk? Right. So
Right.
for me, it's a big balance. I mean, I'm like a certain genre. If you're like gung ho, yes, I'm 100%. Yes, that sells it. But there's also the alluring aspect of those that don't communicate, don't do anything. So I think it just depends on the genre you write in, honestly.
Yeah. No, I like where this conversation is going, and I'm smiling from the inside because it's just fascinating to me. Because you look at movies, and I'll get into a question there that I have for you guys. And movie gets done. Let's say it's a Marvel movie, and then all the actors in that movie are doing their tour, right? They're doing interviews, and they're going from city to city for opening day and yada yada yada. And so that's part of the game. That's part of selling the product, right? And I'm sure to a certain extent, books are, the same way book signings, when you have the author of a book, at a Indigo, and you're like, oh, I'm going to get to meet, Mickey Mickelson. He's going to sign my book. This is the best thing ever. And then that increases sales. And the other part you said that I like, Amy, is, kind of telling that author, like, just kind of sell it from the heart, like sell it from where what you're passionate about. And that always sells itself, I find, other than trying to be something you're not. So the movie question that I have is Stephen King again, perfect example. So I don't know how many movies his books have, that turned into. And is there any example? That must be scary. I guess the question I have is it must be scary for an author to be approached to say, hey, Amy, your book is phenomenal. It sold millions of copies. You want to make it into a movie. Because in a sense, if it's not done right, it could really kind of destroy the product in a sense, right? I mean, the book will always be good on the shelf, but fans may go, I don't know, just curious.
Well, so I'm going to go to 50 Shades of Grey. Okay. I hear this about the movie and the book.
Right on.
And so that's just my example, right? That we're going to go with because I hear about it all the time. So I think if the movie industry doesn't do it right, it comes back on them because everyone says like, the movies were good and they're like, oh, the books are okay, but I would have much rather read the book than seen the movies. Right.
Right.
And so I think it would draw people more to the book because they're like, oh, well, I watched this movie, but I hear that the book's really good. So I'm going to go like read the book instead. And then they do the same, like they did the same thing in Harry Potter, right? The movies were really great. You have people that really like the movies, but then you have people that are just like, man, the books are better. Twilight's a great example too, right? The Twilight books are amazing. So much better than the movies, right?
Yeah.
So you have, that kind of, people will always pick, but I think if the movie isn't done to the quality of the book, then it's kind of one of those where people are going to lean on the book. So in Stephen King, right, I am a huge fan of the original It, like back in the day.
Yeah.
I didn't like the new one, right? I liked the original one. That one was
with Tim Curry.
Yeah, that one was so much. It was more like suspenseful and scary to me than the new one, right? So I equally liked them both. I liked the book. The Shining, though, I will say, I listened to The Shining. I think it's that one on audiobook because me and my husband will double listening to it. And that book is, to me, far more scary than the movie. The movie is scary. Okay, it's legendary. I'm not saying that. But the book, to me, just listening to it, I mean, I had chills. So, I mean, it really just depends. But I'm an old school at heart, though. So I like the older versions of Stephen King movies.
Yeah. And likewise. And that's cool, hearing it from somebody younger than myself. I grew up in that era, being 50. So here's the thing, and I might be on the right path here with what we're diving into. Well, the book, when I read a book, and it'll be a two-pronged question. So when I read a book, it's my imagination at play. It's my movie screen inside my mind and how I'm taking what's being illustrated for me, and I'm painting the picture and the colors and the environment and the world that's being presented to me. So to make a movie where there may be millions and millions of book readers of that book, and everybody had their own imagination when they were going through the experience of reading that book, well, it's kind of hard to nail. I think it's kind of hard to nail a movie that everybody would say they nailed it. It was great. And the example that I'm using, it'll be a question you guys and I'm using, is I remember reading Silence of the Lambs when it first came out.
Yeah.
Great book. Fantastic book. Was front of the line to see the movie. I loved it. I thought they did an incredible job with the movie from the book. It literally is like I sat there watching the movie and I was reviewing the read in my mind. Any movies for you guys that personally, that it's a book you read and you went to see it and you went, yeah, loved it?
The Bone Collector with Jeffrey Deaver.
Okay, and that was Denzel Washington and Angelina Jolie.
Yep. Ooh. They mimicked that book. Hollywood mimicked that book, in my mind, to a T. I don't know if Jeffrey Deaver was responsible for helping with the screenplay, because typically Hollywood won't allow the authors to give input on that, just creative direction. But that movie and that book, same level of entertainment, same level of chills, same level of suspense, everything.
And I take Mickey's, let's say, advice or opinion on subject matters like this as very serious. And I'll tell you why, Amy. Not only because he's candid and transparent, and the fact that he knows very much what he's talking about, is, I know we've had a lot of conversations about movies and whatever, and I still think to this day, one of Mickey's favorite movies that he feels has done really well is Wonder Woman. I'm just being a bit of a
Oh my
She
god.
knows my opinion on Wonder Woman. We had this talk yesterday, actually.
So
I'm not going to comment on Wonder Woman. You know my take on that.
Oh
So.
my goodness. Oh
and
my
that
goodness.
was another car ride, and he's like, "Oh," I think I asked him, "So what did you think?" He goes, "I think he almost like, I don't know, imploded." And, and I was like, "Wow, that bad, eh?" He's like, couldn't even get the words out. It was that bad, but
No.
it's interesting to hear it from people who understand, appreciate the work, right? From books. What about you, Amy? Do you have a movie that you were like, yeah, love that?
I mean, the one that comes to my mind is, I mean, I think it was really well done. I mean, I'm still always going to love the book, but I think it was really well done was Lovely Bones. I don't know if you guys.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that the actress? She's kind of a slight blonde-haired girl. Maybe I've got it wrong. What's the premise of that story? It sounds familiar.
A teenage girl goes missing and they can't find her. The dad, is looking for her and everything like that. And so they allude to a lot of things that happened to her in the movie. So it's one of those. That one is it is the one movie that I watched and I read the book that has stayed with me very much so.
Okay. Very cool. I'll have to. I've heard of it. I think I've seen the thumbnail or something, but I'll have to consume that. So a couple other little, I guess, kind of movie questions, and then I want to get into about what the future looks like for both of you, the business, the partnership, kind of what I think some of the viewing audience, when they go and maybe watch this, because this goes to my YouTube channel, stays on the Cusp, and my personal Facebook feed. Be curious to see what's next for you guys. So to cap off sort of the movie thing, any Lord of the Rings fans here?
Yes.
Okay. Mickey.
Sure.
The Bob. There's the Bob. Yeah.
I'm never going to slam Tolkien. Let's put it that way.
Okay. So this is more directed at Amy than Mickey.
Okay.
I got to align myself with my peeps. You can dive in when you want. So have you been watching these series?
I have. I haven't seen the finale though, but
I saw it last night. Yeah.
Okay, because I'm on the finale episode. I'm gonna watch that tonight, but I have been watching it. So
what do you think of the series?
Yeah, I really like it. There's certain aspects of it that I like, right? But I have to go back and watch the other the OG Lord of the Rings, right? Not the Hobbit, anything, like Lord of the Rings, because I don't remember, and it's been a long time. I don't remember the orcs like talking like that, and communicating and stuff like that. I don't remember that. And then to me, like, it's kind of like, okay, well, if you put the movies out and they didn't talk, and then you have them talking in here, it's like a disconnect.
It's a prequel too, right?
Yeah, and it's like a disconnect because it's like, well, why? I don't know. For me, that's what bothers me. But then I don't know. I watched the episode 7 last night, and I was like, okay, this is getting good. I'm in now. I'm in. So
well, you raise a good point. I'm going to have to go look at the other Lord of the Rings now too.
Right?
Like, if that's the case, you're kind of like, it's like all of a sudden orcs have cell phones. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, you know what I mean? So, and the reason why I asked that, because books are movies are books. They're inspired by literature, right? Mm-hmm. But it's also looking at, when I watch a show or a movie or something, I look at the writing. I look at how well written it is. Yeah. Like whether it's a comedy or it's a drama, even the banter sometimes. It's just, when it's well written, there's the author piece, right? Because there are writers who are very talented that have to create the experience on a page, and then those actors have to be able to deliver it, right? So, super cool. What about? We won't get into that one.
So do you like B movies? Have you watched B movies?
Oh yeah, I have. Yeah.
Okay, I love B movies for that reason. Because I find humor in their writing style, and you can kind of tell that they're like still amateur, but they're trying so hard, right? So for that, like, I love B movies for that, and like B movies that are horror films or even.
Oh yeah, I 100% agree. 100% agree. And I love horror movies, love them. And what's interesting is I never did. Like as a kid growing up, just a kind of a quick story about movies is I remember living in Edmonton, Alberta. I was 13, and I was at my buddy Steve's to watch Nightmare on Elm Street, the original, the first
Yeah.
one. I kid you not, I'm not lying to you guys. That movie messed me up for 3 years.
Oh man.
3 years. 3 years.
Wow.
3 years. I went to bed every night wondering if Freddy was going to get me.
Wow. That's
Until I was
crazy.
about 16. Like, it really marked me. But in my adulthood, I love it. I'll sit and watch a movie that's scary, and I'm like, I'm not scared. Like,
Yeah.
it's scary. I remember when my daughters, oh, you have to watch The Ring, Dad. You watch The Ring, Ringu or something. So by myself. Wife doesn't like the horror movies so much, but she's the one who recommended to go watch It Too, which is, we just talked about that yesterday, right? Because she always sneers at my, hey, Georgie, you got some popcorn? Pop, 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 pop. And she just goes, you need to stop. But I love them today, so it's super cool. Thanks, guys. Super entertaining. Thank you for indulging me there. So what's around the corner, Mickey, Aimee? What do we have to look forward to?
Well, for me, it's just a matter of continuing building media opportunities for my clients, signing high value clients, and from that aspect, just continuing onwards. Leveraging Top Shelf with Aimee, of course, on that. And then I guess we can drop the big news, Aimee. Yeah, no?
Yeah, go for it.
In January, we are going to have our own podcast network as well. The website will be created. We're going to have multiple shows, and it's really meant to leverage Creative Edge and Abundantly Social and Top Shelf with this network to give an all-around umbrella format so that it's a one-stop stop for everything that we're doing, really, end of the day. And it's just going to open up all kinds of opportunities. We're hopeful within the book community as a whole. So, yeah.
That's very exciting. Congratulations. Good for you guys. So just more on your plate.
Exactly.
Big time.
Exactly.
And you heard it first. No one else knew until today.
Yeah.
So
Well, like when Mickey.
Oh, well, I'm tickled. That's awesome.
Well, when Mickey comes, when Mickey sends you a Facebook message, hey, you got time? I have an idea. Then you know that more is going to be added to your plate.
Yeah.
So I just buckle in. I'm like, yeah.
But if you're loving it, right?
Yeah. I love everything that I do. I love the people that I help, and I get to, be a part of them creating something amazing, which is what I love doing. But I think for Abundantly Social, we're closing out the year. We have a big 12-day palooza thing that we do for authors. But, I think like around the corner and stuff is, there's going to be like some growth and stuff, but it's just helping get more authors their story told. Like that's my goal every year, is if you're writing a book and you haven't finished it yet, and I'm working with you, then it's okay. Well, what can we do to get that book out this year? So that's kind of what I see for Abundantly Social, helping whoever I can, however I can is my goal. And, we're going to throw this podcasting network in there in the mix too. And we're going to have it, where you want to listen to a reader, writer, or just an entertaining podcast, hopefully our network can provide that for you to help you kind of learn or take you out of reality or have a good laugh, right? Because I'm all about humor. So
and awesome. Love it. Yeah. Same thing for me. I always say, if you're not laughing, man, then it's, I don't know. And right? I'm the person I laugh at myself most of the time. It's true. You gotta know how to laugh at yourself. So the humor part I resonate with. So, it's really, awareness, right? These different platforms, avenues that you guys are endeavoring to continue on with in the magazine and now podcast, network. Awareness, not only for, authors that are already in the mix and going, or authors coming up, or even somebody who may be considering, if they have an idea about a book, they can at least hear people who have been there, done it, being consulted by the likes of the two of you who have been there and done it for a long time. So I think the value that you will bring to that demographic is awesome. And I applaud the two of you for just being so entrepreneurial about your profession. And so there was something else I was going to say along the lines about what's around the corner. Oh, yeah. Do you guys do any travel for your work? I know the last couple of years has been kind of silly with, COVID and all that stuff. But do you guys travel to different engagements?
I haven't been. I might be potentially going to Thriller Fest in New York next year. I haven't decided yet. It's
Thriller
gonna
Fest?
Thriller Fest. It's a
Oh,
book convention in New York City,
that
run
sounds like
by the International Thriller Writers Association. So I'm contemplating on doing that. But really, I mean, the focus again is clients, the magazine, and the podcast, and getting all the tools necessary to make that a success. We're hoping to get advertisers. We're hoping to get sponsors, things like that. We won't be asking the Dallas Cowboys because we know Amy's total on that. But I mean, that'll be a hard no if the Cowboys call. But beyond that, that's what our goals are going to be going forward. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I travel to different like Comic-Con or conventions in the, Central Texas region. Like I have one coming up next weekend in Corpus Christi, but I do those fun. It's for fun at the same time to support some of my clients that go and sell their books and stuff like that. So I usually try to make an appearance so they feel supported. So
nice. Those Comic-Con, I've never been to one.
Oh,
I
cool.
hear it's quite an experience. I hear it's like it's a thing, right?
It's so much fun. Oh my gosh. Okay, so here's how like much of a nerd I am. Like I'm totally gonna like let my nerd flag fly. I will like go and dress up. So like one year I was Captain Marvel. Last year I was Gwynnum. And I'm still trying to do like a family one, like where, my oldest daughter is like the original Yoda and my youngest is baby Yoda and my husband's the Mandalorian. And then I don't know, Princess Leia or somebody, right? And like, that's my ultimate goal. Like, it's so weird, but I love them. It's such like a cool and like welcoming community, but they love authors. Like the readership that goes to them is incredible. Like, it's wonderful. Yeah.
Anytime I've ever seen something online about it or whatnot, it's got a real cult feeling to it, and it's which is great. It's great energy. It's exciting. What about you, Mickey? Do you dress up? Do you do the dress up thing?
I usually do for Halloween with my daughter. I've been Batman before. I've dressed up as the Shadow. I did go to a couple Comic-Cons a couple years ago. I didn't dress up for those that year, but if I do go to more Comic-Cons going forward, I will be dressing up because it's just the way. You can't do it right unless you dress up. That's the reality. So.
And are most of the people there dressed up? Like if I went not dressed up, I'd be the one standing out?
No. There's a good flow of people that don't dress up and people that do. You have people that actually get paid to dress up, like
absolutely
professional cosplayers and stuff. So they put everybody to shame. Okay, so it's okay. But you can go. I've gone to normal clothes before too, so you're good.
That's cool. I'll have to take one when I get a chance. So rounding the corner here on the show, if the both of you were to leave, I always try to leave with nuggets for the viewing and listening audience. Is to, as far as from your perspective and what you guys do, but I think the theme here is really around authors getting the help, the guidance, and the nurturing they need to get their babies out into the world safely and successfully. So what advice could you leave people with who are, pursuing the author life?
Never give up. And, if you're going to do something, just have a proper vision of what you want to do. Be professional in it. Invest money to get the book properly edited, properly formatted. Get your image out there. Invest money in that if you can. But don't get deflated, because end of the day, as you do give up if you're an indie author, by doing that, you're actually not succeeding in yourself. And the longer term that you push on this, the more likely you're going to have success down the road. And if you're an indie who's professional and has invested all the money to do things right, and I've said this before in other interviews, you deserve to be on that stage as much as any New York Times bestseller, any award-winning bestseller, Stephen King. If you do that, you deserve to be on the same stage as Stephen King. Just don't give up.
Very cool. Well, that's our tagline here at On the Cusp, never give up. So I am 100% all in with that statement, Mickey. Yeah. And surrounding yourself with the right people. Aimee.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, things take time. And so the publishing journey, if you decide to publish, whether you self-publish, traditionally publish, whatever it is, it will have peaks and valleys. It happens every time. No matter how many books you publish, each publishing journey is going to be different. And that's okay, right? Because when you surround yourself with people like me, Mickey, cover designers, all of those people, we've navigated extremely wavy waters. Okay. So don't let that discourage you from publishing, right? And don't take reviews that are negative personally. Use them to help you become a better writer. Because I think if you only get 5 stars and that's all that you get, you have nothing to personally improve on, where you want to have some 3s and some 2s. So, okay, I hit the mark with all these other people, but here's different areas that I can strengthen, right? So take them as motivation to excel greater at your craft and to really craft what you're doing, right? Because you have to constantly be molding to make it better, to make it perfect. You're always going to be a better writer in your next book than this current book. So use all those things as motivation, but don't let your publishing journey deter you from ever publishing a book again, because it's different every go round, right? But the end result in having your book out there and seeing people like it and buy it is the greatest for me. Now, I've never written a book, but I have published so many and helped publish so many that it's the greatest thing to see when, in odd terms, you've crossed that finish line, you have it out there, right? Because then you're like, okay, well, what's next? So all the, wavy water that you went through and heartache and, moving things back and everything is worth it at the end. You just have to make it to the end, and you will. But go, let your peaks and valleys go. It's going to be a ride. It's going to be a ride, but embrace it and go with it, because it makes the end result so much sweeter. Don't let any of that deter you, because I'm telling you right now, it's going to happen. Just be prepared for it.
That's a really great message, Aimee, and that caps it off nicely. Even like for me, it's be open to receive feedback. That feedback is the only way. It's a measuring stick, right? It's a thermometer on. Yeah, you can take it or leave it. I mean, it can be one person's opinion and saying, "Hey, I'm good. I think I'm happy with this part." But if something has merit, I always say I'll look at it and consider it. And if it's something that I look to change because it's the change I'm looking for, then I go to work on that, right? So that's super cool. And to really get back to what you said in the beginning to end the show, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And that's really what it is. A genuine thanks to both of you for wanting to come on OTC and share what you guys do, clearly passionately in your experience. And it means a lot that you're taking the time out of your lives to talk about what you guys are so good at. And I wish you great success, and I'll look forward. And I know Mickey will keep me apprised of all the latest and the greatest that comes up. And I get to see your, the posts on Facebook too. That keeps me in tune, speaking of social media and awareness. So thanks again, guys. Really appreciate it. Wish you well. And maybe at some point down the road, if we have an idea for another show, I'm all for it.
Thank you so much, Steph, for doing this. And thanks, Aimee, for joining today.
Oh, of course. Thank you guys for having me on. It was so much fun. It was so nice to meet you.
Likewise. Right on. Take care, guys.